The first time I realized something was wrong, the wolf in front of me didn't have a scent, not fear, not aggression, not the sharp metallic spike of adrenaline that usually leaks off a cornered shifter like steam from a cracked pipe. Nothing. Rain slid off the corrugated roofs of the industrial district and pooled in shallow craters across the concrete. Red and blue patrol lights smeared across the wet ground, breaking apart in every puddle. The air smelled like oil, rust, and storm water, the familiar perfume of places where people do things they don't want seen. Except the wolf in front of me smelled like absence. "Move in," Captain Mirek barked, voice cutting through the rain. Mirek was an alpha in the old-school sense. Broad shoulders, iron-gray beard, and the kind of presence that made younger officers stand a little straighter without realizing why. He believed in hierarchy the way other men believed in gravity. It kept things from falling apart. Tonight, gravity felt optional. We'd chased the suspect through 2 warehouse blocks, 3 confirmed attacks, all in pack-neutral zones, all victims with the same description before they blacked out. Silver eyes, silent approach, no warning scent, which should have been impossible. Every wolf had a scent, even betas like me, especially omegas. Alphas practically weaponized theirs. Officer Jin hovered by the patrol car, tablet clutched to his chest. His dark hair was plastered to his forehead, rain slipping down his collar. "You're sure it's him?" I asked. Jin nodded too quickly. Phone pings put him inside the perimeter, and... He hesitated. Omegas don't hesitate without reason. And witnesses say he didn't register. That's not how biology works. Mirek snapped. I agreed. It wasn't. That's what bothered me. The warehouse doors were already half torn from their hinges when we entered. Inside, the air was colder, hollow. The lights flickered overhead, casting stuttering shadows between stacks of rusted machinery. He stood near the far wall. Male, mid-20s, lean, blood at the edge of his sleeve, not his own, from the look of it. His chest rose steadily, too steadily for someone cornered by a tactical unit. "On your knees," Mirek ordered, stepping forward, dominance rolling off him like heat. Normally that would have been enough. Even alphas flinch under a stronger alpha. Omegas fold. Betas calculate. The suspect didn't flinch. "I don't want to hurt anyone," he said quietly. His voice didn't match the scene. Calm. Almost tired. "On your knees." The shift started wrong. It wasn't the usual snap of bone and ripple of muscle. No surge of scent. No warning spike. Just a flicker, like something glitching beneath skin. His eyes went silver. Not wolf gold. Not alpha amber. Silver. Mirek staggered back half a step, not from fear. From confusion. What the... The suspect lunged. Fast. Too fast. He moved without the explosive force of a dominant alpha, without the scent wave that usually accompanies a full shift. He was just there, then not, then there again. Claws grazing Mirek's shoulder before anyone processed the motion. I fired. Rubber rounds. Center mass. He didn't react. No roar. No snarl. Just silence. That's when I realized something else. My beta instinct, the quiet, internal calibration system that measures threat, hierarchy, emotional charge, wasn't responding. It didn't spike, didn't brace. It was like trying to tune a radio and hitting static. "Fall back," I shouted. Jin yelped behind me as the suspect pivoted toward him. For a second, silver eyes locked with mine. There was awareness there. Not feral, not lost. Focused. Mirek recovered and slammed him with a baton charged for alpha-level suppression. The crack echoed in the warehouse. The suspect collapsed. No scent bloomed. No dominance surge. No omega distress. Just the smell of oil and rain. I knelt beside him as the silver faded from his eyes. Blood pooled under his shoulder. His breathing hitched once. Twice. He looked straight at me. Not at Mirek. Not at the flashing lights. At me. "He's trying to stop it," he whispered. "Who?" I demanded. His lips twitched, almost amused. Then nothing. The body stilled. Silence swallowed the room. Mirek swore under his breath. Bag him. I want everything logged. Jin approached carefully, tablet shaking in his hands. We pulled his phone from the alley before the breach. Open it, I said. Rain hammered the roof above us. Red and blue lights flickered through broken windows. Jin swallowed. There's one name he contacted repeatedly. Encrypted thread. No call logs. Just messages. Name. He turned the screen toward me. Roman Vale. The letters felt heavier than they should have. Outside, thunder rolled low across the district. Mirek clapped a heavy hand on my shoulder. We closed this fast, Hale. No speculation. No conspiracy nonsense. I stared at the body that hadn't smelled like anything at all. If there was no scent, what was he? And if someone was trying to stop it, what the hell had we just killed? Interrogation rooms are designed to smell like nothing. Neutral paint, neutral lighting, neutral air filtration. The glass walls are one way, the white overhead panels too bright to be comfortable, and the cameras tucked into the corners blink like patient, unblinking eyes. Control, containment, clean narratives. Roman Vale sat at the center of all that sterile neutrality, as if he'd chosen it. Dark hair, a little too long at the front, brushing his brows. Light gray eyes, almost the same shade as the silver I'd seen in the warehouse, but softer. Human. His posture was relaxed but not careless. Shoulders straight, hands folded loosely on the table. He didn't look nervous. He didn't look defiant either. He just looked present. Most Omegas in interrogation rooms radiate something. Anxiety, defensive sweetness, the instinctive desire to placate. Even the confident ones let something slip, an edge of pheromonal tension, a tremor in their pulse. Roman didn't. If anything, the air felt oddly steady around him. Captain Mirek stood to my left, arms crossed. To my right, Assistant Prosecutor Halden, an alpha with a tailored suit and the kind of smile that belonged in campaign ads, watched Roman like he was already halfway convicted. Halden leaned forward, palms on the table. Roman Vale, he said smoothly. You've been in contact with 3 individuals tied to violent attacks across pack-neutral zones. Roman's gaze shifted to him, calm and unwavering. And 2 of them are dead. You were the last confirmed contact. Roman didn't blink. Halden let his dominance roll out, not dramatically, just enough. A controlled surge, a reminder. The kind of pressure that usually makes Omegas lower their eyes without realizing it. The air thickened. I felt it. I always do. Betas aren't immune to alpha presence. We just don't bend automatically. Roman didn't bend at all. His breathing didn't change. His pupils didn't dilate. His shoulders didn't tense. Halden increased it, subtle but deliberate. Nothing. I glanced at Mirek. His jaw tightened. Roman tilted his head slightly. Are we done with that? Halden's smile thinned. With what? The intimidation. It's not intimidation. It's hierarchy. Roman's gaze slid past him. Landed on me. That was when I felt it. Not dominance. Not attraction. Not anything chemical. Just quiet. Like standing in the eye of a storm. You think I'm orchestrating attacks? Roman asked. His voice was steady, not defensive. Curious. I stepped forward, taking the seat across from him. I think you're connected. Of course I am. He folded his hands again. I'm trying to stop them. Mirek scoffed behind me. Stop what? Roman's eyes flicked to the camera in the corner, then back to me. You've seen one up close. The warehouse flashed in my mind. Silver eyes. No scent. My jaw tightened. Start talking. It's not random, Roman said. The attacks. The instability. They're not evolving. Then what? Halden snapped. Engineered. The word landed heavier than it should have. Halden laughed softly. That's a bold claim. Roman shrugged slightly. So was. Omegas can't fight. That didn't age well either. I shouldn't have smiled. But I almost did. You're saying someone created this, I said carefully. A new form. Roman's gaze held mine. You already know it isn't alpha. Omega. Or beta. My beta instinct. The quiet internal gauge that usually sorts power dynamics automatically felt unengaged, not suppressed, just irrelevant. You were in contact with the victims, I pressed. Why? Because they were deteriorating. Deteriorating how? They were losing scent first, Roman said. Then control. The room went still. Halden straightened. You expect us to believe you're some kind of watchdog? Roman didn't look at him this time. He looked at me. I expect you to notice patterns. I leaned back slightly, studying him. Dark hair, pale gray eyes, no tremor in his pulse, no fierce sweat, no submissive shift. He wasn't trying to be likable. He wasn't trying to be anything. You were abducted last year, I said. Off-grid, for 4 months. A flicker, barely there. Yes. What happened? Silence. Halden exhaled sharply. You're not in a position to. Roman cut him off without raising his voice. You killed one tonight. The word you hit harder than it should have. You think he attacked for fun? Roman continued. You think he chose that? I felt irritation spike, sharp, controlled. We don't excuse violence. I'm not asking you to. His fingers flexed once against the tabletop. I'm asking you to understand it. Myrek stepped forward. You're dangerously close to admitting involvement. Roman's expression didn't change. If you lock me up, he said quietly, eyes never leaving mine, the real predator walks free. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The cameras blinked. And for the first time since the warehouse, something unsettled me. Not because he sounded like a mastermind, but because he sounded certain. And certainty is harder to fake than fear. The council building looks like it was designed by someone who hates warmth. Glass, steel, vertical lines that stretch so high you forget the ground exists. At night, it glows like a sterile lantern over the city, cold and deliberate. A monument to order. I've been here dozens of times. It's the first time I've noticed how sharp it feels. The elevator opens directly into the upper chamber, a wide, circular hall wrapped in floor-to-ceiling glass. The skyline spreads beneath us, rain streaking down the panels like the city is trying to wash something away. Minimalist table, polished surface, no clutter, no scent either. The filtration system in this building is state-of-the-art. It dulls pheromonal fluctuations to near-neutral levels. Hierarchy, reduced to policy. 3 council members wait at the table. Alpha Laurent sits at the center, early 40s. Impeccable suit, calm smile that never quite reaches his eyes. He has the kind of presence that doesn't need to push. It suggests. To his right, Beta Counselor Ives, thin, pale hands folded too neatly in front of him. He rarely speaks in public hearings. Tonight, he looks withdrawn. Captain Mirek stands beside me, shoulders squared. Laurent gestures toward the chairs. Investigator Hale. Captain Myrek. Thank you for coming so quickly. We sit. Laurent steeples his fingers. We've reviewed the preliminary report from the Industrial District incident. Then you know it doesn't fit established pack physiology, I say. Laurent's smile tightens almost imperceptibly. Unusual cases do not automatically imply systemic disruption. There was no scent, I say evenly. No dominant spike. No omega distress response. The suspect's neural readings were abnormal. Ives shifts slightly. Laurent tilts his head. You're suggesting evolution. I'm suggesting design. The word lands in the glass chamber and doesn't echo. Mirek shoots me a warning glance. Laurent's gaze sharpens, not aggressively but with calculation. Careful. Investigator. Sir, I continue, ignoring Myrek for once. Multiple victims were in contact with Roman Vale. He claims the attacks are engineered. Roman Vale is an omega with a history of instability, Laurent replies smoothly. He doesn't present unstable. Laurent's eyes flicker, just once. Ives finally speaks, voice soft and almost colorless. Presentation can be managed. There's something in the way he says it that makes my spine straighten. Managed how? I ask. Silence. Laurent leans back slightly. There are classified initiatives designed to maintain pack stability. You are not cleared for their operational details. Is one of those initiatives called Project Axiom? Mirek exhales sharply beside me. For the first time, Laurent's expression truly shifts. Not anger. Assessment. I'm curious where you heard that term. In a redacted budget allocation tied to biomedical research, I say. Same fiscal quarter Roman veil disappeared off-grid. Ives looks down at the table. Laurent's smile returns, but thinner now. Project Axiom, he says carefully, is a theoretical framework exploring adaptive resilience across pack structures. That's not an answer. It is the only answer you require. The temperature in the room feels lower. You want this case closed, I say. We want stability, Laurent replies. There are bodies in industrial zones, and there will be more, he says calmly. If panic spreads. The words settle heavily. You're asking me to arrest Roman Vale and call it contained, I say. We are instructing you to conclude the investigation within existing parameters. And if the parameters are wrong? Laurent's gaze hardens, just a fraction. Investigator Hale. The city functions because hierarchy functions. Alphas lead, betas enforce, omegas support. The moment that balance is publicly questioned, instability multiplies. There it is. Not biology. Narrative. You are not authorized to pursue speculative genetic engineering theories, Laurent continues. You are not authorized to access sealed archives, and you are not authorized to imply council involvement in experimental programs. Mirek clears his throat. Understood. I don't answer immediately. Through the glass walls, the city looks orderly, predictable, structured, but I can still see silver eyes in a warehouse, still hear a dying man whisper. He's trying to stop it. Laurent's gaze fixes on me. Investigator? Yes, sir, I say automatically, but something shifts under my ribs. For years, I've believed the council was the spine of the system. Imperfect, maybe, but necessary. Now I'm not sure whether it's a spine or a jaw, and I'm starting to wonder who it's about to bite. The second attack came 48 hours after the council told me to stop looking, which is how I knew I wouldn't. The abandoned steel mill on the east side of the river had been dormant for years. Broken smokestacks cut into the skyline like cracked teeth. The place smelled like rust, old soot, and rainwater trapped in forgotten machinery. Except tonight, beneath the iron and wet concrete, there was something else. Or rather, there wasn't. No scent trail. Dispatch reported a body found near the loading bay. Patrol units were circling, but none of them were going inside. Smart. I ducked under the half-collapsed gate and stepped into the cavernous main hall. Sparks rained from somewhere above. Faulty wiring, maybe, flaring briefly before dying against the floor. The building hummed with that hollow metallic echo that makes every footstep feel amplified. Officer Hale. Someone called from the entrance. You want backup? I'll call if I need it. I didn't. I followed the faintest smear of blood toward the interior corridor. Not much. The victim had likely been dragged or carried. The hallway narrowed. Dark. No working lights. My pulse remained steady. Betas are good at that. We don't escalate. We assess. Halfway down the corridor, I felt it. Not scent. Not dominance. Presence. A shape moved at the far end, too fluid for a human stride. I raised my weapon. The figure stepped into a shaft of flickering light. Roman Vale. Of course. He looked different from the interrogation room. Dark coat, sleeves pushed back, jaw tighter than before. His gray eyes tracked the shadows like he was mapping them. You're not subtle, I said. You're not supposed to be here alone, he replied. I could say the same. He exhaled softly. It's here. Define it. A metallic clang echoed from somewhere to our left. Something heavy striking steel. Roman's gaze sharpened. They're destabilizing faster. They... His head tilted slightly. You didn't think there was only one... The air shifted. Footsteps. Not quite right. Too even. Too controlled. The figure emerged from the adjacent chamber. Male. Broad-shouldered. Clothes torn at the seams. Skin pale under the industrial lights. His eyes were silver. Just like the first one. No scent. I braced for the usual spike of threat recognition. Nothing came. My instincts slid over him like he wasn't fully registered in the system. He moved. Fast, not explosive like an alpha in full shift. No roar, no surge of pheromones. Just efficient. He closed the distance in a blink, knocking my weapon from my grip before I could recalibrate. We hit the ground hard. Concrete scraped my shoulder. My breath left in a sharp burst. His weight pressed down. Stronger than a beta should be. Not quite alpha-level force, but precise. Calculated. His silver gaze held mine. There was no rage in it. Just absence. "Get off him," Roman snapped. The mutant's head twitched toward the sound. And that's when Roman changed. Not fully. Not like a traditional shift. His pupils narrowed vertically. Wolf-like but sharper. The gray in his irises darkened at the edges. His shoulders squared, but instead of a dominance wave, there was a vacuum. The air around him stilled. No scent. None. The mutant lunged at him instead. Roman moved before I could process it. Too fast. His hand caught the attacker's wrist mid-strike, twisting at an angle that should have been impossible. There was no growl, no feral snarl, just clean, efficient motion. They collided against a steel beam. Sparks cascaded from above, illuminating the scene in brief flashes of white-gold light. Roman's expression didn't fracture. His breathing stayed even. The mutant clawed at him, but Roman anticipated each movement, deflecting, redirecting, dismantling the attack like he'd studied it from the inside. Because maybe he had. I scrambled to my feet and grabbed the shock baton from my belt. "Roman, don't," he said sharply. The mutant's movements began to stutter, jerky, unstable. Muscles twitching under skin like faulty wiring. Roman stepped in close and pressed 2 fingers against the side of the man's neck. For half a second, nothing happened. Then the mutant collapsed. Unconscious. Not dead. The silence afterward felt heavier than the fight. Roman straightened slowly. His pupils returned to normal, gray, human. Still no scent. I stared at him. "You're one of them," I said. Not accusing. Not yet. His jaw tightened. "No." The word came quiet, measured. "I'm what survived them." Somewhere outside, sirens wailed faintly in the distance. The mutant lay motionless at our feet. Not foaming, not snarling, just breathing shallowly like someone unplugged from a power source. "You knew he'd be here," I said. "I felt it." "How?" Roman hesitated. For the first time, something flickered in his expression. Not fear. Memory. "They don't escalate like alphas," he said. "They don't signal like omegas. They adapt. And you don't," I replied. His gaze met mine. "Not the same way." The sirens grew louder. "Back up." Roman stepped back into the shadows slightly, not retreating, just distancing himself from the lights. "You can't arrest this," he said softly. "And you can't shoot it into submission. Then what?" His eyes held mine, steady, unflinching. "You find who built it." Behind him, sparks continued to fall like dying stars. And for the first time since this started, I realized something terrifyingly simple. The thing we were hunting wasn't out of control. It was unfinished. Roman's apartment was exactly what I expected from someone who didn't want to leave traces. Minimalist. Clean lines. Neutral walls. No framed photos. No pack symbols. No scent-marked corners that hinted at territory or history. The only thing that felt lived in was the faint smell of tea and old paper. I stood just inside the doorway, while he locked it behind us. "You bring all your suspects home?" he asked. "Only the ones who can disable engineered hybrids with 2 fingers." That's reassuring. The living room held a low couch, a narrow bookshelf, and a small wooden table with 2 ceramic mugs already waiting on it. Steam curled lazily upward. "You knew I'd say yes?" I asked. "I knew you wouldn't arrest me," he replied evenly. Not yet. Confidence didn't look arrogant on him. It looked calculated. I stepped further inside, scanning automatically. No obvious security systems. No weapon racks. No scent markers. "You live alone?" I asked. Yes. No pack. No. He poured tea without asking how I take it. I noticed that. Most Omegas are hyper-aware of preference, trained to adjust. Roman didn't adjust. He handed me the mug and sat opposite me on the couch. So I said, "Start from the part where you disappeared." He didn't look away. "I was taken outside the city," he said calmly. 4 months. No official record. By who? People who said they were working on adaptive resilience models. Council. He didn't confirm it. He didn't need to. They wanted to know what happens when hierarchy stops working, he continued. When pheromones don't control behavior. When dominance fails. They were experimenting on omegas and betas, he added quietly. That landed harder than I expected. How many? I never saw the full count, he said. We weren't kept together. Isolation improves data clarity. My jaw tightened. What did they do to you? Roman lifted his sleeve slightly. Faint scarring lined the inside of his forearm. Thin, precise incisions. Surgical. They altered our neural responses, he said. Suppressed traditional dominance receptors. Stimulated predatory reflex pathways. To create what? I asked. A form that doesn't respond to hierarchy. The words echoed the council's careful language in my head. Pack stability. Adaptive resilience. You're telling me they were building soldiers. They were building control, Roman corrected. Imagine an enforcement unit immune to alpha influence. Immune to omega manipulation. No instinctual hesitation. A third form, I said. Yes, silence stretched between us. Why you? I asked. Because I don't flinch, he said simply. I almost laughed at the understatement. You're an omega. Yes, you're supposed to. What? His eyes sharpened. Appease, yield, break. I exhaled slowly. I'm saying statistically. I don't care about statistics. That was the first crack in his composure. They chose omegas who didn't conform, he continued more quietly. Betas who resisted pack structures. People who didn't fit cleanly. And the ones we fought. They didn't stabilize, Roman said. The neural rewiring overwhelmed their emotional regulation. No scent. No anchor. And you? He looked down at his hands for a moment. I adapted. There was no pride in the statement. Just fact. How did you get out? I asked. One of the handlers underestimated me. His lips curved faintly. Not humor. Memory. I realized the suppression worked both ways. They muted dominant signals. But they also dampened their own. He met my eyes. They couldn't read me anymore. That unsettled me more than silver eyes in a warehouse. So you escaped, I said. And instead of running, you stayed. They're deteriorating, he replied. The others. Their nervous systems are unstable. If they aren't stopped, they'll keep attacking. You've been tracking them. Yes. Alone. Yes. Anger flared in me. Not at him. At the structure that made that the logical choice. You could have gone to the authorities, I said automatically. Roman's eyebrow lifted. Which authorities? Fair. The room felt smaller suddenly. No photos. No pack insignia. No sign of family. Just tea and paper. And a man who had rebuilt himself from something he wasn't meant to survive. Does it hurt? I asked before I could stop myself. He blinked. Surprised. Sometimes. During shifts. I don't shift, he corrected softly. Not fully. His fingers flexed once. Controlled. It's more like recalibration. That's not a medical term. It's accurate. Silence settled between us again. This time, it wasn't sterile. It was human. I studied him differently now. Not as a suspect. Not as a threat. But as someone who had been taken apart and reassembled for someone else's idea of order. You said they were trying to build something outside hierarchy, I said. Yes. And you think they're still running it. I know they are. How? Roman held my gaze. Because I can feel them. That sounded irrational. It didn't sound untrue. For the first time since this case began, I felt something that wasn't irritation or suspicion. It was quieter. He didn't smell like fear. He didn't smell like dominance. He didn't smell like anything that fit the categories I'd been trained to sort. He smelled like tea, and paper, and someone who should have been dead. "You're not the villain," I said slowly. "No," he agreed. The faintest hint of exhaustion touched his expression. "I'm the evidence. Working with a suspect is technically against protocol. Working with a council-adjacent experimental survivor is very against protocol. Following him through a shipping district at 2 a.m. while pretending we're not being followed ourselves? That's somewhere between reckless and career-ending. And yet, third one this week," Roman murmured, nodding toward the warehouse across the street. We were parked inside an unmarked sedan, engine off. Sodium streetlights cast everything in a sickly orange glow. The building ahead looked like every other industrial shell in the district. Corrugated steel, boarded windows. Nothing officially operational. "No scent reports?" I asked. "None," he replied. The pattern was consistent. Isolated zones, minimal witnesses, quick escalation. And each time, Roman arrived just a little too soon to call it coincidence. "You've been tracking them through what?" I asked. "Instinct?" "In a way, that's not reassuring." He glanced sideways at me. "You're still here." "Don't read into that. I'm not." He didn't smirk. He didn't flirt. He just stated it, which somehow made it worse. We waited. A shadow moved near the loading dock. Roman's posture shifted. Not tense, not dominant. Focused. I stepped out first. "Backup's 10 minutes out," I said quietly. "We won't need 10. Confidence looks dangerous on you." "Good." The figure near the dock faltered, unsteady movements, same stuttering gait I'd seen before. A partially destabilized subject, not yet violent. Roman moved closer, slow, controlled. The mutant's silver eyes flicked between us. No growl, no warning scent. Roman lifted his hand slightly, not in dominance, not in submission. Just presence. "Easy," he said. The mutant hesitated. For half a second, it looked almost confused. Then it bolted. I chased. Roman overtook me in 3 strides. He didn't shift fully. No fur, no claws. Just that unnatural acceleration, like his nervous system ran on a different wiring plan. He caught the mutant before it reached the alley exit and guided it down with precise, practiced motion. No theatrics, no blood. When it stilled, he exhaled slowly. "We need sedation units," he said. "Not suppression. Add it to my list of requests. The council will ignore." We secured the subject just as patrol cars rolled in. Officer Jin approached, wide-eyed. "You two move fast." Roman stepped back into shadow slightly, letting me take the official lead. Later, when paperwork was filed and patrol units dispersed, I found myself back in Roman's apartment, again, this time with takeout containers balanced precariously on his coffee table. "You don't cook?" I asked. "I can," he said. "I just don't enjoy it." "That's suspicious. You interrogate everyone over noodles?" "Only repeat offenders." He handed me chopsticks. I watched him for a moment longer than necessary. He ate slowly, deliberately. No anxious omega habits. No ingrained deference. Just neutral. "You always stare like that?" he asked, without looking up. "Only when someone lies badly." He glanced at me then, one eyebrow lifting. "And, am I lying?" I held his gaze. No, that should have ended it. Instead, something in my chest misfired. My heart rate ticked up, not sharply, not alarmingly, just noticeable. I waited for the usual explanation: alpha proximity. Pheromone interference. Stress response. Nothing registered. No scent spike. No dominance shift. Just his eyes on mine. Light gray, almost silver under the apartment's warm lamp. "You're recalibrating," he said quietly. "Don't start diagnosing me. You're evaluating. That's my job." "It's not just that." His voice wasn't teasing. It was observant. I set my chopsticks down. I don't respond to hierarchy, I said. That's what betas do. Or don't do. That's what you've been told you do. There it was again, the small crack in the narrative I'd grown up with. You think the third form is evolution, I said. No, Roman replied. I think it's exposure. To what? To the space between instincts. Silence settled. I leaned back against the couch, arms folded. You don't smell like anything, I said. That bothers you. It confuses me. He considered that. Maybe you're not used to choosing, he said finally. I choose, every day. Within structure. And you don't? I wasn't given structure, he said. Was removed. That landed. Outside, traffic hummed faintly through the window. Inside, the apartment felt warmer than it should have. My pulse hadn't settled yet. Not from the chase. Not from adrenaline. From proximity, and that was new. Careful, investigator, Roman said lightly. You're thinking too hard. Don't get ahead of yourself. A flicker of something almost like a smile touched his mouth. I wouldn't dream of it. The thing was, I believed him. Which might have been the most destabilizing part of all. If you want to hide something from a city built on hierarchy, you bury it under paperwork. If you want to hide it from someone who reads paperwork for a living, you bury it underground. The service elevator in the council building requires 2 separate authorizations and a retinal scan that I technically shouldn't have access to. Technically, Roman stood behind me in the narrow metal box as it descended past public floors, past administrative levels, past the last officially labeled department. The hum of the machinery was low and steady. You're certain about this? He asked quietly. No, I said. But I'm done asking politely. The doors opened to a corridor that smelled faintly of disinfectant and old dust. Cleaned, but not used. The lighting was dimmer than upstairs. No glass walls. No skyline views. Just concrete and metal. Archive access logs show irregular clearance patterns, I said. Every time one of the attacks happened, someone accessed sealed biomedical files. Roman didn't respond. He didn't need to. We moved down the corridor carefully. The cameras here were older, visible, slower to recalibrate. I'd looped the feed. Briefly, we reached a steel door labeled only with an alphanumeric code. Act 17. Roman's jaw tightened. That's it, he said. Inside, the room felt like a museum for secrets. Rows of filing cabinets, hard drives stacked in locked drawers, a long work table covered in sealed document boxes. Project Axiom. The words were stamped in clean black font across the top of the first binder I pulled free. Adaptive cross-hierarchy optimization model, I read. Corporate language for rewriting biology, Roman murmured. I opened the file. The first pages were all theory. Charts mapping pheromonal response pathways, dominance receptor clusters, neural plasticity models. Then the human trials began. Subject classification. Omega, beta, non-conforming. My chest tightened. They selected individuals with atypical dominance compliance patterns, I said. Meaning? Roman asked, though I knew he already understood. Meaning omegas who didn't submit easily, betas who challenged alphas. People who destabilized structure. Roman exhaled softly. They called that a flaw. Further down, the documentation grew clinical. Neural dampening procedures, scent receptor suppression, aggression reallocation, emotional threshold recalibration. My fingers stilled on a page. Subject 07. Veil, Roman. Neural integration success rate, high. Hierarchy resistance index, stable. Instinct, override potential, viable. I felt the air leave my lungs slowly. You were never unstable, I said quietly. No, Roman replied. I turned the page. Containment. Notes. Subject 01, neural collapse. Subject 02, violent escalation. Subject 03, scent nullification, predatory override. Subject 04, terminated. Subject 05, missing. Subject 06, deceased during integration. Subject 07, escaped. 7, I said. He nodded once. They weren't trying to create chaos, Roman said. They were trying to manufacture obedience. To what? I asked. Authority without biology. The logic unfolded sickeningly clean. If you create a form immune to alpha dominance, you control enforcement through training, not instinct. No pack bonds, no scent hierarchies, just programmable loyalty. You said they were destabilizing? I said. Roman stepped closer to the table, scanning the later reports. They rushed the process after I escaped, he said. Accelerated integration. I found the addendum. Emergency continuation protocol. Subject 05, 08, 09. Deployed field testing. Field testing. In populated zones, I said flatly. Roman's eyes darkened. They weren't random attacks. They were live trials, I finished. Silence pressed in around us. The industrial incidents. The silver eyes. The scentless void. They're not evolving, I said slowly. They're deteriorating. Roman nodded. The neural suppression strips away hierarchy. But without proper stabilization, it also strips emotional regulation. So they're operating on predatory reflex alone. Yes. And the council knew, yes. My jaw tightened hard enough to ache. Footsteps echoed faintly from somewhere down the corridor. We both froze. Security rotation, I muttered. We need to move. Roman didn't immediately step back. He was staring at a final page. Termination authorization. Containment failure response. His name was listed. If Subject 07 exhibits destabilization, eliminate. You were marked for disposal, I said. He didn't look surprised. I know. The footsteps grew louder. I shoved the files into a slim evidence case I'd brought for exactly this possibility. We go out through the maintenance wing, I said. As we slipped back into the corridor, something cold settled under my ribs. The council hadn't lost control of an experiment. They had deployed it. And the attacks we'd been chasing weren't masterminded by Roman Vale. They were being committed by escaped, unstable subjects who were never meant to live long enough to question orders. Project Axiom wasn't a research error. It was a strategy. And Roman wasn't the villain. He was proof the strategy could fail. The footsteps rounded the corner ahead. Roman glanced at me. Still think this is speculation? He asked quietly. I met his gaze. No. For the first time since this began, fear brushed the edges of my thoughts. Not of the mutants. Not of Roman. Of the institution I'd sworn to serve. And the teeth it was about to show. The suspension notice hit my inbox before I even made it back to my desk. Temporary removal pending review. That was the polite version. The real message came 5 minutes later. Report to Conference Room 3, Captain Mirek said, voice flat over the comm. Conference Room 3 isn't used for briefings. It's used for decisions. The air inside felt heavier than usual. Mirek stood near the window, arms crossed. Across the table sat Alpha Laurent and 2 security officials I didn't recognize. Roman was not there, which told me everything. Laurent didn't bother with a smile this time. You accessed restricted archives, he said evenly. Yes. You removed classified materials. Yes. That constitutes breach of clearance. Yes. Silence lingered. You've always been reliable, Investigator Hale, Laurent continued. Disciplined, pragmatic. I thought so. Laurent folded his hands on the table. Project Axiom is a stabilization initiative designed to protect this city. By turning Omegas and Betas into disposable weapons, the security officers stiffened. Laurent didn't. By preventing widespread structural collapse. There's no collapse, I said. There's dissent. Dissent, Laurent replied calmly, is how collapse begins. He slid a thin tablet across the table toward me. On the screen was a document already approved and signed. Emergency Containment Authorization. Target, Roman Vale. Status, Non-Compliant Subject 07. Directive, Termination. My throat went dry. You can't justify that, I said quietly. He escaped containment, Laurent said. He accessed restricted zones. He is connected to multiple violent incidents. He's been stopping them. He is proof the process works, Laurent corrected. We cannot allow proof of the process to destabilize public confidence. It was said so cleanly, so reasonably, as if Roman were a faulty shipment to be recalled. Mirek finally spoke. Oscar, he said quietly, this doesn't have to end badly for you. There it was. The choice. You assist in containment, Laurent said. You bring subject 07 in, quietly. You preserve order. And if I don't? Laurent's gaze cooled further. Then you are complicit. The word settled into my chest like a stone. For years I believed the system wasn't perfect, but it was necessary. That hierarchy, however flawed, prevented chaos. Now I understood something uncomfortable. It wasn't preventing chaos. It was manufacturing obedience. Roman was already packing when I reached his apartment. He didn't look surprised to see me. Let me guess, he said. They moved faster than you expected. They signed a termination order. He nodded once. Efficient. That's your reaction? What did you expect? Anger flared. I expected you to be afraid. He met my gaze evenly. I've already survived worse. That hit harder than it should have. They gave me a choice, I said. And I held up the thin evidence case containing the Axiom files. Pack light. For the first time since I'd met him, something shifted in his expression. Not shock, not relief, recognition. You're aware this makes you unemployable, he said. I'm aware. They will revoke your clearance. Your rank. I know. Your reputation. That was already changing. He studied me for a long second. Why? He asked quietly. Because I don't smell fear around you. Because you didn't flinch. Because I'm tired of being told neutrality is enough. I didn't say any of that. Because they're wrong, I said instead. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Not random this time. Directed. They're here, Roman said. Rear exit, I replied. We moved quickly. Down the back stairwell. Through the maintenance corridor. Out. Into the alley, behind his building. Black SUVs turned onto the main street. Go, I said. He hesitated. You don't have to come, he said. I'm already in. We cut through side streets, avoiding main roads. My badge would trigger alerts if scanned now. My access codes were probably being revoked in real time. By the time we reached the abandoned transit yard near the river, my phone lit up with a final notification. Access terminated. Investigator Hale. Status suspended pending investigation. I stared at it for a moment. All those years, all that training, the belief that law and justice were adjacent concepts. Roman stopped beside me under the skeletal frame of an old rail bridge. You can still turn back, he said. Can I? He didn't answer. The city lights shimmered across the water. Cold, structured, controlled. I used to believe in that structure. Now I could see the scaffolding behind it, and the bodies buried beneath. I don't work for them anymore, I said quietly. Roman's gray eyes searched mine. Then who do you work for? I looked at the evidence case in my hand, at the man beside me who had been turned into a project code. For the truth, I said. The words felt unfamiliar, but they felt right, and somewhere beneath the anger, beneath the severed badge and revoked access, something in me settled. Not instinct. Choice. The abandoned rail tunnel smelled like damp stone and forgotten motion. Water dripped from the arched ceiling in irregular rhythms. Old tracks ran into darkness, swallowed by shadow. Somewhere far above us, an active train passed, the distant rumble vibrating faintly through the concrete like a ghost of movement. It was quiet enough to hear your own pulse. Mine was steady. Roman stood about 20 feet ahead of me, near the curve where the tunnel bent out of sight. The city had revoked my access, my badge, my authority, but not my training. I'd chosen this place for a reason. No cameras, no pack zones, no witnesses. You're shaking, I said. I'm recalibrating, he replied. But his voice was tighter than usual. This wasn't like the industrial fights. This wasn't controlled. Since we left the council building, something in him had been accelerating. The Axiom files weren't just documentation, they were triggers. Names, data, memory. And memory is chemical. His breathing hitched once. Then again, I can feel them, he said quietly. The others. They're close. Close how? Like static under the skin. His hands clenched at his sides. I stepped closer. You need space? I asked. No. His pupils began to narrow. Vertical, predatory. His shoulders tensed, but not in the typical Omega defensive posture. It wasn't submission. It wasn't aggression. It was instability. Roman, I said evenly. Look at me. He did. For a split second, the silver flickered back. My body waited for the familiar reaction, the spike of threat recognition, the instinct to assert control, to dominate or disengage. Nothing came. No fear, no hierarchy, just awareness. His breathing grew uneven. I can't regulate it, he said. The neural dampening suppresses dominance input, but under stress the predatory pathways spike. Then let them spike, I said. That's not how this works. Why not? His jaw tightened, because when it peaks, I stop distinguishing threat from proximity. That sounds like a training issue, I said dryly. He almost barked a laugh. Almost. His muscles jerked suddenly. Movement too fast, too sharp. He staggered back a step, bracing against the tunnel wall. You should leave, he said. I'm not leaving. You don't know what that means. I know exactly what it means. He looked at me then, really looked. Your heart rate isn't elevated, he said. I noticed. You should be afraid. I'm not. His pupils constricted further, almost fully slit now. That's biologically inconsistent. Story of this entire week. A tremor ran through him. Not violent, contained. You don't respond to dominance, he said slowly. No, and I don't emit it. Correct. Silence stretched between us. The distant sound of another train rolled overhead. The vibration traveled through the rails beneath our feet. You're not trying to control me, he said. Why would I? That's what alphas do. I'm not an alpha. Betas align with structure. Not tonight. His breathing steadied slightly. The silver receded from his eyes, not fully, but enough. Most reactions are chemical, he said quietly. Pheromones, hierarchy, pack instinct. It dictates proximity, attraction, threat assessment. And none of that is happening. I stepped closer until we were within arm's reach. You want a dominance display? I asked softly. You want me to order you to calm down? No. Good. Because I don't take orders well either. A flicker of something almost like relief crossed his face. What you're feeling isn't a glitch, I said. It's choice. His brow furrowed. That's not how instinct works. Maybe that's the problem. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the fight between rewired neural circuits and whatever part of him was still human. Project Axiom tried to remove hierarchy, I continued. But they didn't account for something. What? That you don't need dominance to regulate behavior. He studied me carefully. You're suggesting restraint is voluntary. Yes. And proximity isn't control. Yes. His breathing slowed. The tremor in his hands faded. You're not afraid, he repeated. No. Why? I considered the question. Because you don't smell like threat. Because you didn't flinch in a glass room full of alphas. Because when you move, it's deliberate, not cruel. Instead, I said, because fear is chemical. And I'm not reacting to chemicals. The silence in the tunnel felt different now. Less sharp, more grounded. Roman's pupils returned fully to gray. You stayed, he said quietly. I told you, I don't work for them anymore. That's not what I meant. The weight of that settled somewhere low in my chest. For a moment, neither of us moved. No dominance surge, no Omega appeasement, no pack alignment. Just two people standing in a tunnel, breathing the same cold air. The third form, Roman said slowly, is supposed to erase hierarchy. It doesn't, I replied. What does it do then? It exposes what's left when hierarchy is gone. He watched me carefully. And what's left? I held his gaze. Choice. The distant rumble faded. The tunnel returned to stillness. And for the first time since this started, I understood something the council never would. The third instinct wasn't dominance. It wasn't submission. It wasn't neutrality. It was deciding, consciously, who you stand beside when the structure collapses. The city chose the worst possible time to pretend nothing was wrong. Saturday afternoon, Central Transit Plaza, open-air market, food stalls, children chasing each other between fountain jets, pack-neutral territory by design, no official scent markers, no declared hierarchy zones, a place where everyone was supposed to coexist without pressure, which made it the perfect testing ground. My phone buzzed with an emergency alert before the screaming started. Unconfirmed disturbance. Downtown. Roman and I were already moving. By the time we reached the plaza, the air felt wrong. Not sharp, not aggressive, empty. People were running in waves, scattering away from the fountain. Vendors abandoned carts. Someone had dropped a stroller. At the center of the chaos stood a man I recognized from the Axiom files. Subject 05. His eyes were silver. His movements weren't wild. They were systematic. He advanced in straight lines, knocking people aside with mechanical efficiency. No roar, no scent, no dominance flair. Security officers attempted to form a perimeter. The mutant passed through them like they weren't calibrated to him. Containment unit, inbound. Someone shouted. Containment meant lethal. Roman stepped forward before I could stop him. Don't, I said sharply. If they kill him, it ends like the others. And if you don't, he'll escalate. The mutant's head twitched toward us. He saw Roman. Recognition flickered, brief but unmistakable. Roman moved slowly into the open space between the fountain and the crowd. Stay back. An officer yelled at him. I stepped beside Roman instead. The plaza cameras were already streaming. News drones hovered overhead. Good. I pulled the evidence drive from my jacket. You're really doing this now? Roman murmured. When else? Subject 05 lunged forward. Roman met him halfway. The collision sent water spraying from the fountain's edge. The crowd screamed again. Roman didn't shift fully. No fur, no claws, just that unnatural acceleration and precise counterforce. He redirected the attack away from the nearest civilians, guiding the mutant toward open space. I activated the broadcast, not through official channels. Through every public network node I could access with the codes I'd memorized before they revoked my clearance. Screens flickered across the plaza. Advertising boards, transit monitors, handheld devices, Project Axiom documentation filled them. Subject lists, neural modification charts, council authorization signatures, Alpha, Laurent's name. Attention, I said into the open channel, my voice feeding through external speakers. This is former investigator Oscar Hale. The attacks in this city are not random. They are the result of an unauthorized experimental program conducted by the council. Gasps rippled through the plaza. Above us, news drones shifted focus. Project Axiom, I continued. Adaptive cross-hierarchy optimization. Human trials conducted on omegas and betas. Neural suppression, scent nullification, predatory override. The mutant slammed Roman into a concrete barrier. Roman grunted but held his ground. Silver eyes locked with his. Roman, I called. I've got him, he said, through clenched teeth. You're destabilizing, Roman told the mutant softly. You don't have to. Subject 05 feet's movements grew erratic, glitching between attack and hesitation. On every screen around us, footage from the sealed archives played. Grainy clips of laboratory corridors, sedation units, restrained subjects. Laurent's recorded briefing on structural compliance. The crowd's panic shifted. Not gone. Redirected. Security officers hesitated. They were watching the same screens. The mutant raised his arm again, but slower this time. Roman stepped inside the strike, catching the wrist and pressing 2 fingers to the nerve cluster at the base of his neck. Stand down, Roman said, not commanding, not dominant. Steady. The mutant's silver flickered. For one suspended second, everything felt balanced on a knife edge. Then Subject 05 collapsed. Unconscious. Alive. Silence spread outward from the fountain. Water continued to arc into the air, glittering in the afternoon light. The screens kept playing. Council memos. Budget allocations. Termination directives. The truth didn't explode. It settled. People stared upward. Phones recorded. News anchors scrambled to reinterpret the narrative in real time. My device vibrated with incoming calls, blocked numbers, official lines, reporters. I ignored them. Roman straightened slowly. His breathing was heavy but controlled. No scent, no dominance, just presence. "You just declared war," he said quietly. "I declared transparency." "That's worse." Sirens approached from every direction, this time not to suppress, to respond. I looked around the plaza, at the stunned faces, at the screens still displaying clinical language for human experimentation. "They can't bury this," I said. Roman followed my gaze. "No," he agreed. The council had built its authority on the assumption that hierarchy would always override doubt. But doubt was spreading now, through fiber optic cables and handheld screens and whispered conversations. Truth, unlike scent, doesn't dissipate easily once released. As officers moved cautiously toward us, not hostile, not friendly, I felt something shift beneath the chaos. Not dominance, not submission. Accountability. The real predator wasn't the silver-eyed man lying unconscious at our feet. It was the story the council had told for years. And for the first time, that story was unraveling in public. The council didn't collapse overnight. Institutions don't. They fracture quietly. First came the public inquiry. Emergency hearings broadcast across every network that had carried my feed. External oversight committees formed within 48 hours. Legal teams scrambled to reclassify language that no longer sounded theoretical once attached to living subjects. Alpha Laurent resigned 3 days after the Plaza incident. The official statement cited administrative miscalculation. No one used the word experiment anymore. Councillor Ives testified voluntarily. That surprised me. He looked smaller under public scrutiny, his voice even thinner than in the glass chamber. He admitted awareness of Project Axiom's continuation after Roman's escape. Awareness, but not intervention. It was enough. The Emergency Stabilization Division was dissolved. Axiom was terminated, not archived. Terminated. Roman was detained briefly, not as a suspect, but as a protected witness. I stayed outside the hearing room the entire time. When he stepped out, 2 oversight officers flanking him, he looked the same as always. Calm. Gray-eyed. Unflinching. "They cleared you," I said. "Yes. No charges." "No." I nodded once. "That must feel strange. Being officially recognized as human?" he asked lightly. "Yes." He considered that. "It feels quieter." The city felt different too. Not calmer, but less rigid. Pack districts remained. Hierarchies didn't dissolve just because a committee said so, but something had shifted in the narrative. The idea that biology was destiny had cracked. Public forums filled with debate. Omegas spoke openly about compliance expectations. Betas, quiet, often invisible, questioned enforcement roles. No riots, no collapse, just conversation. The surviving Axiom subjects were relocated to medical stabilization programs. Voluntary this time. Transparent, overseen, not perfect, but not hidden. As for me, my badge was never reinstated. Officially, I'd breached clearance, released classified material, compromised operational integrity. Unofficially, I'd made it impossible to quietly restore the previous structure. Captain Mirek met me once, in a neutral cafe near the river. "You burned bridges," he said, stirring his coffee. "I know." He studied me for a long moment. "Still think you were right?" "Yes." He nodded slowly. "That's inconvenient." "For who?" "For everyone who preferred it simple." He stood to leave, then paused. "Neutrality isn't the same as absence," he said quietly. "Don't forget that." I didn't. Roman and I walked out of the courthouse that final afternoon without escort. No cameras chasing us, no sirens, Just the sound of traffic and wind moving between buildings. You don't look triumphant, he said. I'm not. Regret? No. He studied my face carefully. What then? I searched for the right word. Adjustment. He nodded once. The plaza fountain was still running when we passed it. Children played again in the spray. No one flinched. Freedom doesn't announce itself. It just stops asking permission. And for the first time in my career, I wasn't standing inside a hierarchy. I was standing beside someone. Not ranked, not assigned, just chosen. 3 months later, the office smells like burnt coffee and new paint. It's small. 2 desks. 1 cracked window that doesn't quite seal out city noise. A metal filing cabinet that sticks unless you kick it at the right angle. The name on the door reads, Cross-Hierarchy Investigations Unit. Unofficially, the department that makes everyone uncomfortable. I set a stack of case files on the desk and glance at Roman across the room. He's leaning against the window, sleeves rolled up, scanning a tablet. You realize this place has less funding than a parking enforcement team, he says. We're efficient. We have 1 working printer. Strategic minimalism. He snorts softly. The light catches his eyes. Still gray. Still human. No scent markers in this office. No dominance cues. No pack insignia on the walls. Just coffee. And paperwork. You're staring again, he says without looking up. Only when someone lies badly. He lowers the tablet slowly. And am I lying? Not yet. A pause. Then he walks over, setting the tablet down on my desk. So, we're partners now? He asks. Professionally. And personally. Don't get ahead of yourself. The corner of his mouth lifts. I wasn't. Good. Silence settles. Not awkward. Steady. A knock hits the doorframe. Officer Jin steps in. Hair slightly longer than before. Expression curious. Heard you 2 are recruiting, he says. Independent Review Division needs analysts. Thinking of defecting? I ask. Thinking of evolving, he replies. Roman glances at me. I shrug. We don't enforce hierarchy here. Jin smiles faintly. That's the point. After he leaves, Roman leans back against my desk. You know they'll test this unit, he says. Push boundaries. Let them, and if the structure tries to rebuild itself, it probably will. He studies me carefully. You don't sound afraid. I'm not. Why? I consider the question. Because fear is chemical. Because instinct is inherited. Because choice is deliberate. Because I know the difference now, I say. Between what? Dominance and responsibility. He nods, slowly. Outside, the city moves. No longer perfectly ordered, but not collapsing either. We don't need hierarchy to stand in the same room. We don't need instinct to decide proximity. We don't need scent to choose. Roman picks up his tablet again. Coffee? He asks. Only if you make it this time. I don't enjoy cooking. It's coffee. He rolls his eyes lightly and heads toward the tiny break counter. I watch him go. My pulse stays steady. Not because I'm neutral, because I'm certain. The third instinct was never about erasing hierarchy. It was about proving we don't have to obey it. And for the first time in my life, I'm not reacting. I'm choosing.